This is Dianne Andrews in black and white. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Thank you, audience. Thank you for coming to Dianne Andrews in black and white, and it's pretty obvious I'm Dianne Andrews. Thank you out there in TV land. Thank you sitting in studio. Thank you YouTube. Thank you Vimeo. Thank you the 50 parishes we go to and Mississippi that I'm usually remiss and don't mention Mississippi. And again, I'm going to thank the Hawthorns in Liberty for watching the show. Giselle Harrelson told me that you're her cousin or her aunt, and you watched the show. She happened to come over there one day and you were watching it there in Liberty, Mississippi, so thank you for that. Today, I was on a radio show last Friday. I think the largest radio show out of Louisiana Radio Network, or one of the largest here in Louisiana. He's up in my hometown around Monroe, Shreveport, New Orleans, Thibodaux, and Baton Rouge with Louisiana Network Radio. Thank Jim Engster for being here, the Jim Engster Show. You can go out there on his website, I think, and still see that show, can't you, Jim?
You sure can, JimEngster.com.
JimEngster.com. So if you want to hear me with some provocative questions he asked me about adultery and getting me in trouble, you can go out there and hear that. But I'm going to try to return some of that favor today with some things that I asked Jim. Now, Jim was born in New Orleans and Little Rock, Arkansas, and then he came on up to LSU and went to college here at LSU. In fact, in 2012, he was just inducted into the Manship Hall of Fame for his work. He owns the Louisiana Radio Network, and he also owns Tiger Rag magazine.
The Bible of LSU sports.
I saw that, the Bible of LSU. Why you call it that?
Well, it's a magazine devoted to LSU and to LSU sports, and it's like no other that is published. It's been around since 1978. So
did you start the magazine?
I did not start the magazine, but I've been writing for it since 1985, so I've been there a while.
Because you're a journalist and a radio host.
I am.
Right. And you're also a political commentator for WAFB here.
Yes.
So let's talk about politics a little bit. Are you a conservative, or are you a liberal, or are you an independent?
It depends on the issue. I'm probably conservative on some issues and liberal on others, but
what are you registered?
I don't like to be boxed in.
You tried to box me in on his radio show. He asked me was I conservative. Yeah. Are you registered a Democrat or a Republican?
I am a registered Democrat.
Oh, okay. So, and I saw you interviewed Bill Clinton, you interviewed also Dick Cheney, both parties, and you've interviewed other celebrities, Debbie Allen, Pam Grier. Those were two good-looking women to interview, I tell you. And you've interviewed some notables. How have you done that recently? Are you interviewing them for issues or about their fame when you talk to them like that?
It's both. When somebody is well known in a particular area, it gives them cachet that perhaps the rest of us would not have. But most of these people are still active and doing things. And when I interviewed Dick Cheney, he was the sitting vice president of the United States. And it was literally on the brink of the Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi War.
Right.
And he at that time was beating the drums saying that we had to take out Saddam Hussein because he had weapons of mass destruction. And as it turned out, he did not.
Now, I've done about 7 shows on ISIS and what is going on over there. I even had a guy from Baghdad, Iraq, fly in from Baghdad. He was on we did a telephone interview with him, and he's a friend of Coach Del Brown's who watches the show. He and Del Brown came on to do the show, and you know, Coach Brown is very intimate into Middle Eastern affairs also. And he had said that one possibility may have been that they moved them, the weapons of mass destruction, because we did give them ample warning, we're coming, we're coming, we're coming, and we asked them to I think, bring them forth or something, which never happened. So I think more people think than not, though. There were no weapons of mass destruction with Saddam Hussein, who was our friend at one time, I think I read, and then as Osama bin Laden was our friend at one time. Yeah.
There was a time when Donald Rumsfeld and others involved in high places.
He was our Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld.
He was, and before that he worked in other administrations. He was the Chief of Staff for Gerald Ford. Okay. So he was a big chum of Saddam Hussein at one time, and then things changed along the way, and we ended up having a war against him in 1990. Right. And then in 2003, a big war.
Right.
And he's dead and gone. Maybe the world's a better place for that, but it's been a tough slog since the war broke out 13 years ago.
Right, and that's what they call it, the war over there, because it was in '03, as you said, 13 years. When it started over, and 9/11, of course, is what this all precipitated from. And 2 years later, we went in and we did what we did in Iraq, and we did go into Baghdad then, which George Bush #1 never did go into Baghdad.
No, he never did.
And maybe that was a wise decision.
Well,
a lot of bombings there this week in Baghdad.
It's really been a chaotic situation in Iraq since the U.S. invasion, the U.S. and its allies in 2003. And
yeah, the allies,
and
all two of them.
Even Jeb Bush
Yeah.
has said that it was a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think
US.
they kind of pinned him on that when he was running for president.
That's true. But he said it was a bad thing.
Right. But obviously the whole Congress went for it, I think, except 1 or 2 people. So.
Well, Hillary Clinton went for it.
Yes, yes.
She's running for president as a Democrat.
That's right.
So she bears responsibility as well.
That's right. Now, what do you think of Bernie Sanders, who is a socialist running under the Democratic ticket? Socialism is quite different, way left to earth than just a Democrat, usually.
Well, in the United States, we have this big gap between the haves and the have-nots, and most of us are in the have-nots category, and Bernie's appealing to a lot of people who believe they've been disenfranchised, that this country works for some people but not for others. And I think the frustration is such that they put aside this socialist label and have enabled him to get some traction, and he's run a tight race with Hillary Clinton, and if it were not for the superdelegates, he might very well be the Democratic nominee this year.
Which, to me, the superdelegates decide who the Democratic nominee is. That's almost, as Donald Trump says, rigged system, because if you get the superdelegates, because they're pretty close, I think, in actual count, aren't they?
Yeah, they're pretty close, but 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton received more votes than Barack Obama.
Right.
And she carried the big states, California, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. They all went to Hillary Clinton, but yet Barack Obama was the Democratic nominee by virtue of carrying red states that he, for the most part, did not win in the general election against John McCain.
And I think it was because the superdelegates, a lot of them ended up going with him, didn't they, to push him over the hump.
That is correct.
Back again to whoever the establishment may want in at one time. Superdelegates can probably be coerced somewhat to do whatever.
But on the Republican side, the establishment was trying to stop Donald Trump and didn't do a very good job of it.
And they shouldn't, because the people have voiced it. To me, the people voiced it.
Well, he's got more votes than anybody else by a pretty big margin, and he's earned the right to be the GOP nominee.
That's right. He has gotten more than Mitt Romney got. And Mitt Romney's trying to stop him and saying all these negative things, but it seems like they're forging together somewhat now, the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party seems to be having a big problem.
Well, Hillary Clinton right now is fighting a war on 2 fronts, and as we tape this show, the latest poll shows her 3 points behind Donald Trump. So it stands to be a very competitive race this fall.
And I like that, and I think, you know, Donald Trump is known to dish it out. But Hillary Clinton is always, what does she call it, a right-wing conspiracy. They've been using that since Bill Clinton was when it was in office in Arkansas. And let's see what the right-wing conspiracy does this time, because Donald Trump is not going to let her just walk all over him like some other people may have.
Well, the debate should be interesting, and Trump
They're going to throw a lot of slash.
Yeah, a lot of slash.
Mess. By that I mean
I've got a new term.
Yeah, slash I call it, yeah.
But it'll be an interesting, interesting is an understatement. It'll be a fascinating showdown between Hillary and Donald, and they both have closets that are pretty full of skeletons.
That's right, they both do. You had asked me on your show, should, you know, she's not responsible for what her husband did as far as the sexual alliances that are claimed, but I said it's about how she reacted to it with the women. And if you're going to call Donald Trump or whoever, you know, a bigot toward women, then you have to look at how you treated women when your husband was accused with plenty of ammunition and plenty of proof on what he was doing with some of those women. So I think that'll come out pretty big in this election.
Proof like a blue dress?
Yeah, one blue dress with stains, and we won't talk about what it was stained with, right? The blue dress. And then you have, what was her name, Paulette Jones?
Paula Jones.
Paula Jones, the one who, I guess he was in a, were they in a hotel or something?
They were-
And then you have Flowers, Jennifer Flowers. I mean,
Yeah, Jennifer
it's so
Flowers.
many. You can go on and on
I
and on.
grew up in Little Rock. I could give you the Clinton tour.
I just spoke at the Clinton Presidential Library. I did a whistleblower speech there at a whistleblowers conference. That's a pretty place, that library, that Clinton Library. That's my first
But-
and only one.
But Mr. Trump has not been a choir boy either.
Well, but wasn't most of his philandering when he was single, except for Marla Maples, or did he mess around a lot on
Well,
that first wife, Ivana?
He knew Marla before he left his first wife.
Yeah,
He had
Ivana.
he had a child with Marla before he married her.
Yeah.
And then he left Marla, and then he meets Melania. But he's been married to 2 women born outside the United States, so I think it's a given that he's an expert on foreign affairs.
That's all it takes, right? 2 women. But also, doesn't that kind of prove that he's not prejudiced against foreigners? That, you know, he's married, like you
Well,
said,
they
2
weren't
out
Muslim.
of 3.
They weren't Muslim.
No, they weren't Muslim, but they were
and they
foreigners.
weren't Mexican. So
So those are the 2, right? Because people
they're
said,
okay if they're European.
but black people on the Black Lives Matter, I've heard them say that he's prejudiced against black people, but I've never heard him say anything about black people, and no one can prove that he did. And I looked all over trying to find it. And you have, what was her
He's
name?
friends with Mike Tyson.
That's all it takes to be friends with Mike Tyson. You must be a good guy with black people. If you like Mike Tyson, if you can put up with Mike Tyson, probably.
I think I'd be anything Mike Tyson wanted me to be.
Yeah, but I didn't want to beat me up like Robin Givens said he did her, right? So, so what do you think of how the country's heading, Jim? If Trump gets in, what do you see? If Hillary gets in, do you see a drastic
Well, this
difference?
is the first time in a long while we're going to have a fat president.
You said that on your
So I
show.
think in order to make America great again, we've got to make America fit again.
Mm-hmm.
And some might say that's facetious, but right here as we sit in this studio, we are sitting in the fattest city in the fattest country in the United States. The average woman in America weighs more than the average man did in the U.S. in 1960.
You said we're sitting in the fattest city and
In the fattest country in the world.
being
In
the
the world.
United
In
States.
the world.
Yeah, in the world. Yeah.
And Nikita Khrushchev, the former Soviet premier, said we would destroy ourselves from within, and I think we're doing it with a knife
he
and a
fat?
fork.
Nikita, was he fat? Was that
He
the one that was
wasn't
fat?
talking about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's the one Nixon pointed
okay.
his finger in his chest, but in the U.S., let's face it, in World War II,
Yeah.
arguably the last war that the United States won, we were the fittest country in the world, and now we're not.
No. The McDonald's
And if we want to have a leader with substance, we need to have somebody who can go with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin,
Vladimir looks pretty good.
and take his or her shirt off.
Yeah.
Hillary, of course, would wear, I'm sure, a swimsuit.
Ooh, no, don't put that image.
And not embarrass the United States.
Yeah. But why do you think that's so important? If you're fat and your values are the right values, now you would consider Donald
Doesn't
Trump.
that say something?
Would you consider him fat or just a little
No, I
overweight?
would consider him fat.
You consider him fat, okay.
He
And
can't bench
Hillary
press-
too.
He can't bench press his weight.
Okay.
He talks about other people's appearance. but
Yeah, he does.
He's no day at the beach.
And Hillary, well, she doesn't talk about other people's appearance. She hasn't aged well, though. She has
You
not.
don't think so?
Had aged well? No, not with all the Anne Klein, whoever
No?
does her designer. You know, she wears all the pants, and they always have a long jacket that comes down to a couple inches above the knee.
Well,
But-
the last 2 presidents, Bush and Obama, have been extremely
yeah.
fit.
And Obama, you see him playing basketball
That's
all
right.
the time.
That's good for the United States. And it says a lot about character and discipline. Here's a guy in my...
So that's what you're saying. It's about character.
In my industry, the most famous person is Rush Limbaugh. Here's a guy who's been married 4 times, who's grotesquely, morbidly obese, who was a draft dodger, who flunked out of college, who's a drug addict, and yet
Oh, the pills. That's right.
yeah,
That's right. He was on the
and yet he is a guy who's been the most successful person in the history of radio. And maybe because of him, we're now more tolerant about our
But
other
people don't
public
see
officials.
him. He's very famous, and they do see him in magazines, but radio, you could be 300 pounds and nobody would know until you come out and they see you. It's not like
But
television where...
now we have multimedia productions.
that's
He's on.
true.
You can watch him every day if
But
you
didn't
want
he
to.
lose a lot of weight? Didn't he go on
He's
some kind
lost
of
it, put
diet or
it
something?
back,
He put it
but,
back? Okay.
But he's a big boy.
Yeah. And he was on, what, the opiates, I think, like Prince just, they
Yeah, he
died
was
from the
on,
opiates, which is heroin. I did a show on that recently.
Oxycontin.
Yeah, which is part of an opiate.
Yeah,
which
lost
is an
his
opiate.
hearing.
Yeah, he did?
He did.
4 times. Well, he's
Well,
not
no,
running
he's
for
been
president.
married 4 times.
That's he's been married. That's been 4 times he's been married.
4 times.
And he's still married to the last one. She's like younger than him, if that's the one about 5, 6 years ago.
Well, Trump's wife is 23 years younger than he is.
Not that hey, I may be a cougar. I don't really have a problem with that. If I come in with an 18-year-old just so they're legal, nobody say anything, okay?
18? Okay.
That's legal right until 21.
Look, I think that would be a more interesting show than the one you and I are doing right
That's
now.
right. That would be interesting. I'm making a joke there. But as you say that, though, you know, men used to do all of the cougaring, as they call the women now. But you see a lot more women now. I have some friends who married some guys a lot younger than them, and it works.
And, yeah,
does it
nothing,
matter, really, what age anyone is?
I don't have
Yeah.
any problem with that. No.
But you made the comment about Rush. No, nothing behind it, just that she, and Trump.
Well,
Well, look at Melania. She's beautiful. Wouldn't you marry her?
Yeah, Melania's a beautiful woman.
Yeah, she's a pretty
I have
lady.
no problem with that.
Yeah, all his wives
No,
have
that's
been.
fine. But
Yeah.
to be married 4 times and to get on the air
yes.
and start talking about the Clintons not having any values,
Yeah.
they've been married once. Mm-hmm. He's been married 4 times.
Some people
Does
stay
he have
together
any
for
credibility?
convenience.
He's talked about Clinton being a draft dodger. He was a draft dodger.
That's not right. How could you say anything about anybody
He's talked
who did
about
the same
Clinton
thing?
not being smart. He flunked out of Southeast Missouri
I think-
State University.
See, I don't watch Rush Limbaugh, so he says all these negative things about everybody else.
Yeah.
When inside, look in the mirror,
Yeah.
right? He needs to take a mirror into his radio station and look at himself.
Yeah.
So
He talks tough, but he's not tough, Diane.
well, he sounds like he's lying. He just says what he thinks people want
No,
to hear.
he's not lying. He's just pointing fingers at other people, and
Right.
he can't withstand the same kind of scrutiny himself.
Right. Yeah, to say he's a draft dodger, yeah, it's not really a lie. That's true. Bill Clinton was, I guess, in his terms. I don't know if he was or wasn't. I don't remember.
Clinton was a draft dodger. He was a draft dodger.
Yeah.
In fact, when we look back over the generation of Vietnam-era people who were president and vice president, there's only been one, and that was Albert Gore, who was vice president in the Clinton years, who went to Vietnam. We've had Clinton, who was a draft dodger, Bush, who was a draft dodger. He was in the National Guard, but saw to it that he didn't get in harm's way. We've had Dan Quayle, draft dodger, Joe Biden, draft dodger, just Dick Cheney, big-time draft dodger, and if Donald Trump's elected, he'll be a draft dodger who becomes president.
What about Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense? Was he a draft dodger
He
too?
was too old for Vietnam.
Too old to go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
So, compared to Vietnam to the ISIS war, because we're going to have to start wrapping it up, because that was kind of an unsung war for a lot of our vets back in Vietnam, right? There was never called a war, and it was a
And we
thoughtless
lost 57,000 Americans.
men, right? Way more than we have in the Middle East, but still, one man
Right.
is too much. But what do you think? What do you think the strategy should be in the Middle East? And we're going to wrap that up when you finish this one. Jim.
Well, I don't know what the strategy should be because it's a new type of war. You know, ISIS is a different type of enemy. There's no defined country. We can't invade a country.
Well, their headquarters is Raqqa, Syria now, so they do have a headquarters.
And of course, there is action going on as we speak in
Right.
Syria, but it's not like we're going to invade a land and plant a flag and say we've beaten ISIS.
Like Normandy, yeah.
It's a much more subtle war, but something obviously has to be done because whatever's being done now is not sufficient.
Well, our president 2 years ago, when I first started this show, he said that they're a JV team. They were never a JV team, and he said, I think about 8 months ago, we have no strategy for ISIS, but we do have to have a strategy, whatever that strategy is, and now we've got almost 5,000 special operations troops there now in Iraq. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the next president's strategy hopefully will be. And with ISIS and everything else, with getting us some jobs back and stopping businesses from leaving America, that's one thing I think that Trump, being a businessman, will be able to do, maybe to change that a lot of headquarters are leaving out of here because of the high tax that they have to pay in America. So thanks for being with
All
me,
right,
Jim.
sweetheart. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
A pleasure being with you.
Order your copies now of Dianne Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Dianne Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for coming back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White with that interesting talk with the Louisiana radio talk show host, Jim Engster. Now we're going to change the mood to a very complex problem, something that hurts women. I don't know how many people have noticed or seen that 250,000 deaths that were reported by hospital error last month. It was in an article, in many articles all over the news, and they have been reported to be, from medical error, 450,000 down to 250,000. Heart disease is our #1 killer in America. Number 2 is cancer, about to overcome heart disease. And then number 3 is hospital error. That says a lot about a lot of mistakes going on in the hospital. This is a similar show. I have Dr. Edward Robinson III. Thanks for being with me, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Ms.
On with me, he's a native of Hammond, Louisiana. He went to school, undergrad at Grambling University, and did an exchange at Yale University up in Connecticut. And then he went on to get his master's from University of New York, Albany, and got his Juris doctorate degree. He received that from Rutgers University over in New Jersey. So he comes with a lot of education, a lot of great credentials here with us. But I want, what we're specifically going to talk to you today is about your daughter and this device called a power modulator. I'd never heard of it before. I was at Waffle House eating with a friend of mine. He came over, he said, oh, we watch your show. I want to get on your show. Can I get on your show to talk about this power modulator, what it did to his daughter? So that, I'll just say, was made by Johnson & Johnson, the biggest power modulators. They've been taken off the market pretty much in 2014. And Ethicon, I guess a division of J&J, was the one who really manufactured the power modulator, which minces up the tissue as it goes in, say for a woman, it's a laparoscopic device. And tell us what it did to your daughter.
Well, what happens, Johnson & Johnson manufactured these power modulators to help remove fibroid tumors in ladies. And what happens is that
hysterectomies too, with cancer,
It's a minimally invasive procedure where they just puncture holes into the abdomen, about 3 holes.
And that's the laparoscopic part of it,
Right. But what happens, this instrument is designed to grind up, to disseminate, to mince up the fibroid tumors. And what they have found out, the FDA found out, is that these instruments seed, disseminate, plant, or spread portions of the grind up or granulated, minced up fibroid tumor materials in other parts of the abdomen, many times causing women to have the development of uterine cancer, gallbladder cancer, spleen cancer, colon cancer, and the like, because it is seeded or disseminated the grind up or granulated portions of the fibroid tumor in other parts of the abdomen, unknowing to women and unknowing many times to many doctors. And so the FDA issued warnings that doctors should stop using these power modulators. In April of 2014, the FDA issued a warning, and then they issued another warning in November. And Johnson & Johnson has recalled all of these modulators and has stopped the sales.
You're going to see a picture of the modulator on your screen out there in TV land when this comes on television. You'll be seeing that.
And what happens is that, you know, there's a point in the Bible that indicates that without vision, people perish, and for lack of knowledge, people are destroyed. A lot of women are not aware that the reasons why they have had hysterectomies, partial hysterectomies and total hysterectomies and ovarian cancer can many times be linked to the use of power modulators in the abdomen by doctors who didn't.
So they first went in to get the fibroid. The fibroid minced the tissue, spread it around, which is already diseased tissue because it's abnormal growth, which is what a fibroid is, but it's usually not cancerous. A lot of women have fibroid tumors removed.
A lot of times it's not cancerous, but once it's used, it can spread the material and cause it to seed, be disseminated, to
Now tell us about your daughter. Tell us what happened. How did you get involved with this?
Well, with my daughter, bless her heart, she she found out that she was having problems in her abdomen, and went in, and she had to have several fibroid tumors. I think a total of about 15.
Oh my goodness!
Removed.
And how old was she?
She was 30, right? She was in her early 30s at that time. She's about 39 right now. But the point is that thank God she was able to get to MD Anderson. And she
lives in Houston.
She lives in Dallas. But she went to MD Anderson, and they were able to save her.
Had she had a fibroid removed previously before she got real sick? They used a power modulator.
But she had that done in the Dallas area. She had that done in the Dallas area. But the point is that a lot of persons are not aware of the fact of what can happen through the use of the modulators. And so what happens...
that's why I wanted to do this show when I went home and read what the information you gave me.
And what happens is so many people have buried their mothers, their sisters, their aunts, and not aware of the fact that the cancer that they've had in their abdomen was caused by power morcellators.
Right.
And so all these persons...
Was this used, would you say, how long has the morcellator been out? Do you know,
The
Doctor?
morcellators have been out since 1993.
So are 80% of fibroid removals done with that? Do you have any statistics? Because I know you have a lawsuit, I think, going on, right?
But what happens is that there are over 50,000 fibroid surgeries done, removal surgeries done a year. And they have found out that 1 in every 350 has been linked to causing cancer through the use of power morcellators. So so when you think about 1 in every 350, and then you think about 50,000 a year of those surgeries, it lets you know that there are a lot of people who are not aware that they may have cancer because of the exposure that they've had from the use of power morcellators. What ladies need to do if they, to exercise self-help.
Yeah, this is what we want to know. What
they need to do is go to the medical records department of their various hospitals and request a copy, a certified copy of their medical records, so that
if they've had a fibroid removed.
Right.
If they haven't, be sure to ask no power morcellator be used out there.
That's right. And to find out whether or not, after they get these medical records, so the medical records can determine whether or not they were exposed to the use of power morcellators. And these medical records will tell them that. And that's exercising self-help. That's exercising self-help.
It's something they can do. Let's say they don't have cancer yet, and the power morcellator was used. Is there a time frame that they think it would cause the growth of the cancer?
Well,
if I had it a year ago, if I had it 5 years ago, am I okay probably?
Well, we have a doctrine in the law called contra non volentem. It's from the time that you discover something, you have a certain amount of time to do it. In other words, from the time that you discover
No, but I'm talking about medically. Has there been any statistics? If I had this done 5 years ago with a power morcellator, would that cancer already have started? And I'm probably lucky because it's the time. What's the gestation period?
Well, the medical records will tell you whether or not they had, what kind of surgery they had. But the point is that if they have developed this,
now your daughter had this, right?
My daughter had the cancer and everything from the fibroids. But what happened is that if these persons have had the development of uterine cancer after having been exposed to the use of a morcellator, the term is called leiomyosarcoma. See whether or not those medical records have the word leiomyosarcoma.
For liar in it, right? Leiomyosarcoma for liar.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that is in those, if that's in those medical records, Ms. Andrews, that means that those persons can quickly be able to possibly
we're going to start wrapping this up. Is there any person they should call? Is there any number or any place?
They can get in touch with us, or you can.
What's your number? Give it to them real quick, Dr. Robinson.
Area code 225-928-7876.
Because you're representing people with this problem.
Right.
Thank you very much. It's very informative for women. I know in minority women, I think it's about 50% end up with fibroid tumors. So you need to go back and let's find out, as Dr. Robinson said, if a power morcellator was used to remove that fibroid tumor.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Come on back next week to another informative show with Dianne Andrews in black and white, because there's always shades of gray between black and white.
Wonderful. Thank you.